A small Cambridge inn called the White Horse. The Reformation came.
Restless is raw, unscripted, reformed radio.
Oh, Pastor Michael, it's time to read a book you disagree with, or the book you read you disagree with. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Are you
I'm
disagreeable?
Really well. I don't feel disagreeable today at all. I actually feel very agreeable. I feel like I'm just looking to make good friends with everybody today.
I think we're going to do that. I think we are the place where we make friends. But there's a segment of this show that I think, we give the people what they want. Now, probably the only thing I like to do more than give the people what they want is give the people what I want. And one thing I know...
Which is basically what this podcast is.
Right. And I know there's something I want. I think everyone wants it, where I explain a drink that I'm drinking while we record that usually is a little bit too millennial for others, but I get a lot of joy out of it. So today, but this drink, Pastor Michael, it might retire me talking about drinks that I'm drinking. This might win. And so please let me know if this retires it. And actually what I should say is what I actually want is I don't want to do this segment anymore unsponsored. I no longer want to pay for things that I drink on this podcast. So, Pastor Michael, we may solve a problem for our listeners, because I know, obviously, sometimes I've talked about an alcoholic beverage. Not everyone out there, some of our beloved Baptist friends, they aren't with us on that. And sometimes I talk about alcohol. But today, I'm talking about hop water. Pastor Michael, the world has come full circle. So remember back when I was drinking White Claw on this podcast, and then I drank non-alcoholic White Claw, and we realized we came full circle from carbonated water to alcoholic carbonated water all the way back to pop.
Right.
Well, we've done another full circle.
Yes.
This is carbonated water, which is steeped in hops. So it is a non-alcoholic carbonated water crafted with adaptogens and nootropics. So this beverage is non-alcoholic and has 120% of your daily vitamin C intake because of the adaptogens and nootropics in it.
I love how you're really selling this.
And by the way, it's basically perfect because it's got the bit of the bite of beer, but it's not alcoholic. Dude, you can just do this thing midday, or this is the beer for Baptists. Just have these around.
Well, my wife has had that. She's gotten it before. I don't even know if I tried it, but she seemed to like it quite a bit.
The hop water.
I have to then break those listeners who are excited that you're not drinking alcohol when I very often do not.
Right.
We were recording today, and honestly, it's because I very often just don't have any alcohol in the house, or maybe I unopened a bottle of wine, but I'm not going to open wine if I don't have company. But it just so happens that right now I do have, I'm being from Wisconsin, I do have a fridge in my basement full of cheese and milk and beer. And that's literally almost everything in it. A little bit of lard too. But I'm drinking a Bell's Hazy Hearted IPA.
So he's drinking. Actually. So, or is hop water also water for Presbyterians? Is this beer
water for Presbyterians? Hop water. If you want to sponsor us, we can market that.
We totally can market this. Or if you somehow know how to start this business and you'd like us to a competitor, because they do have flavored ones. The problem with those are they no longer have the taste. Now we're just back to flavored carbonated water, and they're artificially flavored. So that's
thank you.
Yeah,
No,
but
thank you. I shouldn't be drinking this, by the way, because Clara in the group chat, in the Telegram chat, said that I'm clearly getting fat. She didn't put it in those words, but shout out to Clara, who said on one of the last episodes, and it's probably because of things like this. So,
and well, as people continue to call out how Pastor Michael looks on this podcast,
low key. Fat face. That's what I've gotten in the last month.
Friends, this is why you start a podcast.
That's
you start a podcast to have your looks insulted, and so Hop Water will send you Hop Water for free. Those are the two reasons you start a podcast.
Hop Water, if you sponsor us, I will go on a Hop Water diet.
Oh man.
We will prove that you can lose weight on hop water.
Yes, we will show the power of nootropics, whatever those are. And the other great thing we do on this show is Reading Restless. Too bad we're talking about hop water on these episodes, which are almost certainly our lowest listened to episodes. If you like the books we read, make sure you show the love, because few people do. So, Pastor Michael, today we are going to talk about reading books you disagree with. I hope everyone did that. Pastor Michael, I have a story to tell about reading a book I disagree with before we get into this. So last month, I said, there's that really famous guy writing all these books that everyone's reading. I got to find this.
John Mark Comer.
Yes. I was like, I'm going to read. I can't even remember. Well, you'll find out why I can't remember his name. I need to read some John Mark Comer. And I mentioned to the audience that everyone thinks I'm going to show up and I'm going to just be the guy ready to rip this apart. And then you forget, no, Restless wants to be friends with everybody all the time.
Everybody.
I'm going to probably be like, this guy, I get it. I get the draw to this. I'm excited about this. And just as a note, I am a sucker for a good writer. And so if the person is a good writer, I am too willing often to go along with them. And so I had someone give me a book, one of his books that he's well known for. It was called Loveology. And so Michael cringed at the name. And I go,
hey, there are people I love dearly, I respect very much, that use that kind of language too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a regular guy, maybe in Wisconsin, that is drinking beer with a friend and like butchers animals. And so any of that kind of language, it's just like, I don't even know what you mean. Like,
and I drink hot water and live in the suburbs, so I'm like, I'll give this a shot. I'm the other side of this.
Yes.
So the night we recorded our last Reading Restless, so I said, all right, time to start this book. And so I open it up, and I will be honest, in about 10 minutes, I went, I'm never reading this or anything this man writes ever again. It's done. So here's why. I opened to the first page. It's not a normal page. The page is completely pink.
No.
It's white block text. And I go, well, this is a weird intro page. No, this is the first page of the book. And this is how he demarcates where he quotes scripture. It's white on a pink page. And it happens
in the whole book?
The whole book. The pages alternate, many pink pages with white text throughout. The writing was just, I will be honest, it was painful to me. Maybe you are a big fan out there of this guy. I really thought I was going to.
By the way, the last time we brought him up, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like that. I had people that I truly trust and like that were like, you should read this. You might actually really like parts of
this
it.
Book this was abysmal.
I've never heard about that book. That's not what I've heard of.
But right, and it also had this the way of doing it was he kept. Here's his style of writing, how it felt to me. I think obviously what he's trying to do is he's trying to package Christianity, obviously, he'd say for the next generation. He's trying to package it for people who go to millennial burger restaurants, right? Who will pay $45 for a burger, and then pay individually for fries or whatever. But right, he would do this thing where he would say, so it's a book I learned as I had no idea what it was about, because obviously the title made it completely unclear. It was going to be about marriage and that kind of stuff. And he would say something like, not that, like pretty normal, like a normal thing. He'd be like, but wait, stop. Did you get that? And then he would do it again. Say the same, like it was almost like a copy and paste again.
That reminds me, this is like when I read a Trevin Wax book once.
Sure.
And that's how I felt about it.
T-Wax.
The whole thing was like, there's nothing novel or really interesting. Like, it's pretty bland, obvious stuff. But the way it's written is like that. Like it's like it thinks it's being really clever.
That's right. And so, yeah, it felt like and this book was like, I looked at this book and I was like, this is a 200-page book. There are at least 60 pink pages throughout. The font changes on different pages. I think his writing style is using as many words as possible to say something. I'm never reading this. So, the person who was kind enough to lend it to me, I gave it back to them and I said, thank you. I'm never reading this. And they laughed and we laughed together. So here's the first principle, Pastor Michael, of reading a book you disagree with. And this is a problem. This used to be a big problem for me with books. You cannot be afraid to stop and just quit.
It's true.
On any book, do
even
not
things, even things that are otherwise good. Yep.
Yes. I am the like completionist kind of person, especially with books. Like,
me too.
I mean, I started it. I've got to do it. No,
Yep.
no, know what the book is for or why you're coming to it at least, and do not feel any obligation to read it cover to cover.
Yes, that's a great point. And it actually segues in some ways into my book that
Great.
I was reading for this books that you will disagree with.
I'll come back to try some others after we talk about yours.
Yeah, we'll come back.
I'll come back to what I tried after that.
Just since you set me up.
Perfect.
So I've got a stack of, probably a dozen books, mostly maybe half and half, actually, half by Roman Catholics. It includes the Roman Catholic Catechism and things like that, that I've been meaning to go through for a while. And then also assessments from other traditions of Roman Catholicism, some of them, older historical works, some of them more modern. And I've been meaning to just start picking away at some of these. And I've done that a little bit this year. So for instance, one of the books that was in that pile was the Apostolic Church, which is it, which we've talked about on the podcast.
Yeah,
another book was Why Do Protestants Convert, put out by Davenant Press. And which was interesting, by the way, not formatted well. Somebody didn't do the best job of formatting that. Definitely found some errors too.
Oh, no.
So shoot me a free copy next time and I will help point that stuff out. So those are fine. So what I picked up this time for this month was called The Dogma of the Catholic Church. It's written by a guy, I don't even remember his name. I could go grab the book, but I'm not gonna because I'm not actually that far into it. It's actually a really dense, thick book. And it's basically a comprehensive yet short treaty on the dogmas of the Catholic Church by a Roman Catholic guy in Germany in the 1950s. I don't know if Germany was as whack, like the Roman Catholic Church in Germany was as whack then as it is now. I assume it wasn't quite, but it may have been. I don't know. And so maybe some people wouldn't like that I'm reading a German Roman Catholic theologian because they do seem, it sounds like Germany, like the German Catholic diocese is about to get kicked out. Even by Pope Francis was maybe going to kick him out. Like that's how horrible they are.
I've learned that. Yeah, this would be a fascinating interview for us to do, just because I'm interested that the German Roman Catholics are basically in schism right now with Rome, and I don't.
And
I
over
do,
like progressive things, like so
Yes.
they're very pro homosexual. They are also like if you've seen the like that rapping bishop or rapping priest that's gone around. It's a great video to find, by the way. The next time a Roman Catholic's like, look at this goofy mega church stuff, you just hit them with one of these, and it's awesome. It's such a good experience because you're like, oh, like the traditional like unbroken Church of Rome, right? Boom. Rapping German bishop.
That's so great.
It's really bad. I mean, it's really
Oh,
cheesy
wow.
and lame and bad.
I'm sure.
Anyway, so I picked up this book because I thought this would be a good one to read. And I'm probably about a quarter of the way through. Here's why this connects to what you were just saying about being willing to stop reading a book. I'm not intending to stop reading it. What I will tell you is that I've begun to not fully skim read, but kind of skim through parts of it.
Sure.
And here's why, because the dogma of the Roman Catholic Church, a lot of it, we're going to be in full agreement with. Right? There's a lot of things that we are in full agreement with, right? Like a classical theism.
Yep.
We're going to be right up, right? When we deal with the Trinity, it's very good, right? It's very solid. It's even helpful, I would say, at times. And it's actually a really nice, concise place that quotes a lot of the church fathers and councils and things like that. And so it's actually kind of helpful in that regard too.
Yeah.
And what it does is it goes through and it kind of bolds like a line of dogma, like here's the teaching of the church. At least from this perspective, by the way, I don't know if you would say this is accurate even necessarily.
Right.
Because who knows who can interpret the interpreters. But it's at least something that has a bit of that. Now, I'm at a point where, it's gone through things like original sin, right? And the conception of man and what exactly original sin is and does and how that's removed in baptism. What I find the most interesting, by the way, is, and so that is like, this is a place that we disagree. There are, like, I would say a huge portion, a massive portion of this book is on the Marian dogmas, right?
Sure.
And like, that's going to be brutal, but it's, it's like, well, we'll give this much to God. And then boom, like it's such a huge portion of this book is just Marian dogmas. And so I'll get into those. That'll be, I think that's where I will be most interested to like, see the arguments played out. What I would say is this, that so far, and part of it is it's meant to be a collection of everything. So it's fairly quick through each individual argument.
Yeah.
But it is, it is interesting to see something that we already know, but just the assumption of a very specific kind of like, Aristotelian philosophy that it's just assumed in a lot of things. That I'm just, and in some ways I'm like, I mean, I'm, grateful for a lot of things in that tradition. And so it's not that every time I read that, I think, oh, that sounds, weird or wrong or something. But there are times where it's like, wait a minute, there may be things that we could push back against here.
Sure.
But it doesn't seem like there's, of course, any willingness to do that because it's dogma, right? You can't. All you can do is defend it. And so it's interesting how thorough the defense is of those things that we would agree with.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's just a plethora of the fathers and a plethora of councils and like all of these quotations from Holy Scripture. And then you get into other parts of doctrine and it's like, here's the Fourth Lateran Council and that's it. Right. Like it's
interesting.
It's like, that's it. Oh, well,
that is fascinating.
But it's just as authoritative. And that's actually part of the problem.
That is fascinating because obviously the potential problem you run into is you're going to run into this problem of you actually aren't allowed free free inquiry.
Yep. And there's some of these that like, hey, there's actually some points that you're making that I don't think you're right, but we may actually be able to work this out in such a way that we come closer than we are.
Right.
But you're literally not allowed to try to do that. Right. I'm willing to kind of see, hey, is there a way we could actually understand this together? And the other side is not able. So anyway, I bring it up because I've begun to skim through some of those parts that I just think are maybe not as necessary for me to read, which is another thing you should be willing to do. Like you, I want to read everything, right? I want to completely finish, but especially as I have less and less time, I have to be more choosy with how I spend that, even in reading.
Yeah. And so obviously for like you, right, what you're doing is you're also knowing why you're reading, because while the defenses of classical theism actually might be great, that's not your particular reason for coming to the book, right? So
I'm reading this book to find the best arguments, the most thorough arguments for the positions I most disagree with of Roman Catholic dogma, right? That's what I want.
And you're demonstrating another principle we'll get to when you read books you disagree with as well. But the two things I want to point out about just this an investigation of Roman Catholic dogma is, one, what we already mentioned, that the way, if you want to critique a work of Roman Catholic dogma, and I don't think this works in every realm and every kind of discussion, but it does in their dogma, the internal critique of, you do not use the same means, logic, or argumentation or level of evidence acceptable for all of these positions. You will accept whatever line of evidence or argumentation equals this dogma, right? Because you have to. It does not matter how different or similar they are. But then the other problem is, this is the actual problem I have with going deep into Roman Catholic dogma. I try and understand it. I read it. I go, man, it seems this here seems to be the claim of the church. Here's where it seems to have clearly changed, right? Or I make these statements and I go, well, you can't interpret it. But the problem is at some point, and maybe I'm wrong, Pastor Michael, at some point it's turtles all the way down, because obviously you need the pontificate to explain scripture. But then if I read the pontificate statements and I say, dang, Francis, for example, the last pope, said no more death penalty. Wow, there were popes that literally enacted the death penalty, right? Like, and this is a small example, but these things happen. And I'm told, no, you can't interpret these things. And so it just, there's always a layer on top of it.
Yep.
So here's the other thing that I think what you're describing in reading something you disagree with, that's really important. You're reading to understand, right? You're like, I want to read this thing in order to understand. In this case, I'm trying to understand the strongest arguments for Marian dogmas, right? Whatever you want to say. The Pope as the head of the church on earth, right? Whatever position. Or you could do this with any book. Now, the book has to make a point. So Loveology wouldn't work for this, because it has to, it has to actually make a point. But right, reading to react or find the thing you can jump on actually is not you being a good reader, right? Don't read another book like an atheist reads the Bible, like, oh, there were two angels here, obviously wrong. Like, don't read the Bible like the worst readers. Don't read anything like the worst readers of the Bible read anything. Read to listen. Yeah. Because even if you're reading to critique, which is a fine reason to read something, to actually powerfully critique something, you actually have to really understand, right? The depth of your level of understanding allows the kind of critique you want to do. What are other reasons you might read a book you disagree with, Pastor Michael? Obviously, I said one, just because it's literally enjoyable, or the writer will communicate in a way that will be compelling and interesting to me that I can learn from.
I feel that way, by the way, about what's the What's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy guy?
Oh yeah, that guy, good writer. Obviously,
That whole
Pagan.
series is hilarious. Now
It
there are
is.
times that it's very blasphemous and horrible.
Yeah,
But the vast majority of it is absolutely hilarious. And
yeah. Douglas Adams. Yeah, that's
Doug Adams. Yeah.
yeah.
So I like that series. I find super brilliant, enjoyable. Like I love reading it. And also I'm like, no, kids, you can't read that till you're a lot older because
Right.
it's not good. It's not good for you. It is alcohol in a way, right? It's
Yeah.
you gotta be careful how much you take in. You got to have it in the right places and doses, and you got to be the right age and maturity for it. So yeah, absolutely, because there's an enjoyable element in it. For sure, could be one. I think you can read to understand whether it be a certain group or a movement, right? So reading something that is very popular that you know to be wrong can be helpful, both to understand it, but then also to be able to speak to people on the level. So, many years ago, I mean, I was pretty young, but when I did this, but the prayer of Jabez was all the rage. It was everywhere. You could find it everywhere. And it was basically a book where a guy was like, look, here's this prayer that was prayed in the middle of this. I mean, where is it? It's kind of in the middle of a chronology, I think.
Chronicles, yeah. Yeah, it's in Chronicles.
And then it's just this like quick little prayer that we're told. And he's like, this is the secret to everything. And if you pray this, you will get all the money you ever wanted.
Yeah. And that's
so learn how to pray this prayer.
Chronicles.
All right. And, I was even as a pretty young, not young believer necessarily, but young too, like really taking the faith seriously. Yeah. I saw it everywhere around me and I was like, this is silly. I know it is. I just know it. I don't even have to read it to know it. But everybody's talking about it. And so I should read it and find out. I did the same thing with Heaven is for Real. Heaven is for Real, where a little boy just amazingly, right when his family were having massive money troubles, had this vision that allowed them to write a book that would make them tons and tons and tons of money, where he goes to heaven and there's unicorns. I don't remember if it was a unicorn, but there's things like that. And the Holy Spirit is blue, evidently. The Holy Spirit is blue, everybody. The little boy saw it in heaven, and so it must be true. And we know that it's true because he saw what Jesus looked like, and then he saw this image that another little girl had painted of Jesus when she went to heaven. That's this like very popular, Middle Eastern man portrait. And he said, yeah, that's it. And so now we know it's real for real this time.
And then
I don't know, by the way, somebody could let me know. Most of the people that do this do end up coming out later, and the kids end up saying, oh,
I was about to tell you. I'll link to the article.
This one? Was it?
He wrote an open letter and asked Zondervan to stop publishing it because it was all a lie. And at least, I don't know if they've stopped now, but they originally.
Are you for sure that's Heaven is for Real? Or because there was another one.
Oh, I guess I don't know if it's this one. Obviously, my heaven tourism.
Believe it or not, there's a lot of them.
Yeah. I'll look it up. And see if
you should. But I read it. So I read that because I wanted, I was trying to read these books that were incredibly popular in the Christian world that I was in. But that I knew were probably, there was something wrong about them. I couldn't tell you what. Same thing. I read a lot of Rob Bell. I read, his that Love Wins when that came out.
Rob Bell, that's again, there's a guy I was hoping John Mark Comer would write like. Rob Bell. Now, Rob Bell has gotten worse at communicating over time.
He has.
But even whatever the Love Wins book, the danger of that book is actually how enjoyable it is to read. Now again, I haven't read it for more than a decade. So I
bet if you went back, you would feel similar to how you feel about John Mark Comer. That's my assumption. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
you're right. Velvet Elvis. Velvet Elvis was that was an interesting book to read.
Yeah,
it was also subversive and evil.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But that's like, again, so just to read in order to understand, this is really popular. And then to be able to speak to people on the level of, oh, I've also read it. Because guess what? If you don't read some of these books, and not everybody should, by the way, but when you tell somebody, hey, I don't think this is good for you to read, they're going to say, what? Have you read it?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you read Jesus Calling, Matt?
Yep.
Have you read it all? Because it's just Bible, Matt.
Right.
It's just Bible. So anyway, like that's a good reason at times to read it, but that shouldn't be the main diet, right? It's also like that's like in your food diet, there's some kind of, let's say like one of those like those horrible peppers that are so intense and crazy strong that it's dangerous to eat, but people still like challenge themselves, or like a food that's like stinky tofu, or like we were just, my family was watching Outdoor Boys on YouTube, which is a great channel, a Mormon, by the way, but a great channel, and they were in Taiwan, and he was eating stinky tofu in duck blood.
Wow.
Okay, like that's the kind of thing that somebody might be like, I'm gonna try this.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean it's like good for you all the time. Now, maybe if you grew up eating it, it's fine for you. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe our Taiwanese listeners will not be happy that I said that's not good. I don't know how normative it is there. But there are things that may be okay to try that are not necessarily, they shouldn't be a staple. That's maybe the point I'm trying to make with good or bad analogies.
Yeah, I do think, again, there is value in reading something for the purpose of discussion. I think that there are times in like, you're talking about things in the popular zeitgeist, but even like for the sake of like evangelism, like let's say the Quran or the Book of Mormon, being able to simply tell the person, like, to show them enough respect to say, yes, I have read it. And so that you can move the conversation beyond, well, you've never like, just so you can take the next step in a conversation so that you don't have to get stuck there. There's value to that. So I was reading, so as I continue to read Calvin's Institutes, I'm in a section on free will. The atheist, Sam Harris, who now is all about some form of new age spirituality, because being mad about religion, that career path died. His career path being mad about Donald Trump also died. And so now he's a new age spiritual guy. I did not read his long book, which I don't think I would be interested in. It's something called like Waking Up or whatever. But I read his two shorter works, one on morality and then one on free will. So these are two short books you could read in just an afternoon, or listen to the audiobook version of in an hour and a half or so. And so his book on morality is on lying, why lying makes everything worse. And there's basically never like a moral calculation that would allow lying. And his book on free will, which argues free will is a myth. You have no power of choice. You actually make no decisions. Everything is determinate. Everything's determined.
Interesting to put those two next to each other.
Very interesting.
Choose not to lie. Everything's an illusion.
Everything is illusion. And so it's very interesting that basically when you have, like, at the end of the day, because it's interesting, right? So part of the book on free will, he walks through why popular definitions of free will can't exist. And he's actually partially right, right? Because like the idea that I spontaneously come up with every decision on my own, like he's like, that's
patently absurd.
Right. And he's like, that's not even the way you experience the world.
Yep.
But right, what he basically denies at the end, which is where we actually, as Calvinists who do believe in a form of determinism, part ways, is he denies it's actually possible to choose the contrary or have chosen the contrary. So for example, he describes that he describes some ghastly murder, and he says, if I were put in the men who did this murder's position and exchanged things atom for atom, like, down to the molecular level, I would do all of those things. And he I don't think he understands. Again, I think what he's basically describing is how determinism would work in a purely materialistic environment. He thinks having a soul wouldn't make any difference. But again, what he's denying is then that means there are actually powers beyond, like, the laws of physics, right? Acting on things. And so, but his book on lying, very interesting, very different. But it is a very interesting analysis of what happens when you lie, what happens when you're not honest, what happens when you won't, like, even small, like, again, it's like, he's arguing there with, like, the moral purity of a clarity of a Puritan, where it's like, even if, like, you tell small, like, white lies or whatever these kinds of things are, he's like, what you've actually just done is you have, at least on some level, told the person in front of you, actually, you can't always trust what I say. So it's and it's actually a very interesting, interesting study of it, and would be an interesting meditation for someone. I actually think it would, on the ninth commandment, on some of the expansiveness of what it would mean and what it would take to be an honest person and why. And so again, they're both, I don't particularly, and he's a pretty decent communicator, right? Obviously back, from those days. So those were the things I actually read that I was able to substantively disagree with. But it's Reading Restless.
Yes.
So I know I don't know if I'll read more than one. My daughter has been waiting for me to finish the next book in the Little House on the Prairie series so she can talk to me about it. So that is I know I will read that because I will get to have a great conversation with my daughter for that reason. I've got other ones I could read, and we'll see when we come back around. Is there a children's book on the top of your mind to listen to? By the way, I think we mentioned this when we did the episode laying these out. My kids and I in the car have been listening to the audiobook versions, and they're almost like dramatized versions of the Chronicles of Narnia. If you've never listened to those books in that format, they are phenomenal, by the way. Good. It's a great way to listen to them. Again, I obviously still prefer reading them, but really great way to listen to them. Your kids, if you have kids, will love it. So there's another recommendation for you in an audio format.
Yeah. So we are currently, and I'll probably, count this, but we're currently working through the Narnia series as a family. So I'll read once in a while. It's been a little bit since we read. April's always absolutely insane for us, always. Yep. And it was even crazier this year, but in some ways less crazy in others. And so, we're working through that, and I assume we'll read at least one of those during this time. I also started already a book that there's just a little bit left of for me that I started also with my family called The Found Boys by S.D. Smith. We're listening to it on the Canon Plus app. So S.D. Smith does the Green Ember series, which, by the way, if you haven't read, great place to go. Great kids books. Also, my boys, I've not listened to this. Actually, I should listen to this because my boys are like, you got to listen to this. You got to listen. S.D. Smith also has a book called Mooses with Bazookas and other stories for children. And so it's just kind of fun little stories. And they love it. I mean, my boys talk about this thing all the time, and every time they re-listen to it, they're like, Dad, have you listened to it yet? You have to listen to it. Wow. And so I will have to listen to that. But I've almost finished The Found Boys too by S.D. Smith, which is just a fun story placed in seemingly like, like Jim Crow era South a little bit.
Interesting.
Between two different these boys, one black, one white, who meet and start hanging out together. Both their dads are pastors, and it's a interesting kind of fun little story. But it's just a really short, nothing, just a kid's story. But found it was pretty funny. Like we were listening to it as a family, and we were all laughing out loud. Based on some of just the characters and the ways they talk and stuff is pretty fun.
Reading Restless. Read with us, take the recommendations, rate and review this show. We are $18 away from the real David Platt review, so now's the time. Now's the time to get on it. All right.